up, family? Andre here. On today's episode, we're going to break down the key parts of the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package that has been recently proposed by President Biden. We're going to talk about the key details and what this means to you and your money. Before we get started, you know the drill. Please don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscriber button, as well as the bell next to it to get updated weekly content. Last week, prior to him taking office, then President-elect Biden proposed a $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. The package is called America's Rescue Plan, and it includes additional stimulus checks, as well as resources and funding for small businesses, as well as extension of unemployment benefits to help spur the economy through this pandemic. Today's episode, we're going to break down the details of the America Rescue Plan and what this means to you and your money. But first, what is the American Rescue Plan? The first part of this plan is the one that has gotten the most publicity, and that is around additional stimulus checks that will be provided to a number of households. The additional stimulus checks will be in the amount of $1,400 per household and will follow many of the same requirements that were put forth in the first round of stimulus checks. Why is it $1,400? Well, the idea is that the cap will be $2,000. We have already been able to have stimulus that has been put forth where it provided families $600. So this additional $1,400 combined with that will equal $2,000. The additional stimulus will go to families that were left out of the first round of stimulus based upon dependents that are over the age of 17. It also will include mixed immigration status individuals that may have not gotten the first round of stimulus as well. Unless something is changed or adjusted in this new legislation, the eligibility requirements for this round of stimulus is the same as it was for the first round of stimulus. It is based upon your 2019 adjusted gross income. Those requirements are individuals that make $75,000 or less, head of household individuals who make under $112,000, and married couples that make under $150,000 per year. Within this legislation, there is also provisions for unemployment benefits. The proposal in the legislation suggests that unemployment benefits will go from $300 per week to $400 per week. It also will be extended through the month of September. It also includes a provision for those individuals that have exhausted all of their unemployment benefits. They now can tap into this new program under this proposal to be able to receive their $400 per week through the month of September. Within this legislation, it also includes a number of categories of workers that were excluded from previous programs. The Pandemic Assistance Program now includes independent contractors, gig workers, or otherwise known as your DoorDash, Uber drivers, as well as others that have been adversely affected by the pandemic. Keep in mind that this program is in addition to the 11 weeks of support that lawmakers passed in December, which will carry those benefits and those resources through the end of March. The American Rescue Plan also addresses eviction and foreclosure issues. It extends the eviction and foreclosure moratorium through the end of September. It also provides an additional $25 billion in rental assistance for low to moderate income families who've experienced a job loss as a result of the pandemic. That is in addition to the $25 billion that was put forth in the legislation that passed in December for rental assistance as well. There was another $5 billion that's set aside for renters specifically to help them pay for their utility bills. Also, there is another $5 billion set aside for states and local municipalities to help those who are at risk of homelessness as a result of the pandemic. There is also provision within the American Rescue Plan that addresses individuals and households who are struggling to provide food for their families. The plan would call for the extension of the 15% increase in food stamp benefits to go through the end of September instead of expiring in June. There is also $3 billion in the plan as well to address women, infants, and children to be able to help them secure food consistently. There is $1 billion in nutrition assistance, and there is a partnership provision that allows the federal government to partner with local restaurants to provide food to needy families as well as jobs to those workers who have been laid off. And also calls for more money for child tax credit and child care. The plan calls on Congress to be able to provide a $25 billion emergency relief fund for child care providers, including family child care homes, to be able to pay for rent, utilities, PPE, and other associated costs with child care during this pandemic. The plan also calls for extending the child tax credit by 1 additional year so that families have the opportunity to get back as much as 50% of their child care spending on children under the age of 13. It also wants to boost the child tax credit to $3,600 for children under the age of 6 and $3,000 for children between the ages of 6 and 17 for 1 additional year. And this child tax credit would be fully refundable. The plan also proposes to increase the maximum earned income tax credit to $1,500 for childless adults, as well as raising the income limit to $21,000 per year and being able to expand the age eligibility to include older workers. Provisions in this plan to address health insurance premiums. The plan calls on Congress to be able to subsidize health insurance premiums for those individuals who have lost employment during this pandemic through the end of September. The proposal also would increase and expand the Affordable Care Act's subsidies of insurance premiums to ensure that enrollees in the plan would not have to pay no more than 8.5% of their income on insurance premiums. There is also provisions within the plan for $4 billion that will go towards mental health and substance abuse disorder, as well as $20 billion to be able to help cover the health care costs for veterans. There are also proposals that address family leave. The proposal would expand sick and family leave benefits through the end of September instead of expiring at the end of December. It would also include employees that work for corporations that have more than 500 employees, as well as those businesses that have less than 50. It would also include federal workers who were excluded from the original program. The proposal also includes those individuals who are either sick or quarantining or have a child that they have to care for whose school is closed will receive an additional 14 weeks of paid leave. And the federal government will reimburse those employers with fewer than 500 employees for the full cost of this additional paid leave. There are also provisions for small businesses within the American Rescue Plan. The plan calls for providing $15 billion to create a new grant program which is separate from the existing Paycheck Protection Program. There's a proposal for $35 billion in investment that will go to some state, local, tribal, and nonprofit financial programs to provide low-interest loans and venture capital for entrepreneurs. As a result of this pandemic, many of the states are running in a severe budget deficit, and there are provisions in this plan to be able to address many of those states with additional funding. The plan calls for sending $350 billion to state, local, and territorial governments to be able to keep frontline workers employed, to distribute the vaccine, to increase testing, to reopen schools, and continue to provide vital services to communities. The plan would call for $20 billion to go to the hardest hit areas of public transit across all municipalities to avoid layoffs and to avoid cutting routes. And there is additional funding for our institutions of higher learning to be able to manage through this pandemic as well. The plan calls for an additional $170 billion for schools both in the elementary, high school, and college level to be able to open safely and facilitate remote learning. The American Rescue Plan also includes provision to create a formalized vaccine distribution program. The plan will propose to send $20 billion to create a national vaccine program, which would include community distribution centers as well as mobile testing for the hardest hit areas regarding the pandemic. There's also a provision to provide federal support to be able to vaccinate Medicaid enrollees. In addition, there is a proposal for $50 billion to go towards communities for increased testing, including pursuing rapid testing that will allow schools to reopen safely. There is also funding that will allow for the hiring of an additional 100,000 healthcare workers, which would triple the current workforce headcount. It would also address health disparities, and provide community health centers and services to Indian tribal lands. There's also funding and support for long-term care facilities that have experienced significant outbreaks within those facilities, as well as resources and funding to prisons to mitigate the spread among the prison population. American Rescue Plan also provides funding and resources for wages regarding several employee groups. The plan calls on Congress to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour, to end the tipped minimum wage, as well as the sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities. And there you have a breakdown of many of the important provisions in the America Rescue Plan that was proposed by President Biden. Keep in mind that this is the first of two proposals that President Biden will put forth. The next one is expected in January, which will address more longer-term goals regarding jobs, infrastructure, and being able to put forth additional resources toward moving the economy out of the pandemic. The key provision regarding this proposal is that it is a proposal. It still has to be legislated through Congress, and there are certain parts of the bill that may be modified, may be changed, or eliminated altogether. That is it. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of several of the key provisions within the American Rescue Plan, the impacts that it is proposed to have on the economy, and how it also impacts you and your money. But before you go, please don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscriber button, as well as the bell next to it in order to receive updated weekly content. Thank you for tuning in.